Well, good morning, everybody. I think it's about that time. Uh, for those of yeah, okay. Let's try it again, everybody. Good morning. Yeah, very nice. Okay. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Larry Woods. I'm the emergency management director. Been here about 25 years, so I'm pretty fresh in my role. Um, so they'd asked me to come today and to talk about the couple of minor wind events that we had. I say it's minor, unless you had a tree laying on your house or you were out of power for a week. It probably wasn't minor to you all. I lost power for I don't know 15 hours, I think, at one point. So it was kind of minor to me, I guess. But I wanted to kind of visit with some. I know this is a big numbers crowd. You like a lot of numbers, so I thought I would kind of go through some of the numbers, but also kind of go through some of the background on what it takes to get declarations and those kinds of things. So we had two big storms kind of come through. One on April 29th, one on June 29th, and we're really kind of over the 29th right now. We're just going to take those off the calendar because we don't like those anymore. But so we had these were both wind events, pockmarked with some minor flooding here and there throughout the summer. This has really been kind of an atypical year for us. We usually don't go this far into summer with the rains that we've had, the storms that we've had. I mean, we love it. Can't keep up with the yard mowing, but it's just not typical for us here in the Midwest. So on April 29th, we had a straight line wind event that came through in the morning. It was fairly early in the day. Those typically tend to be the worst for us because when storms really get ramping up, typically in Oklahoma, by the time they get to us, it's in the evening hours, and the storms, with the sun going down, the storms start to kind of lose some of their punch, and they lose, some of their steam, and they die out. These storms started way early in the morning, and then by the time they got to us, they still had quite a bit of punch left in them. So we had a lot of damage on the April 29th storm. And then again, the June 29th storm, that was more of a late afternoon storm on a Sunday. And it, again, packed quite a bit of punch to it. So for those of you who maybe didn't get out or haven't been able to get out and about to see some of the damages, I have kind of a series of photos in here that kind of demonstrates the stuff that we've been seeing out there. Not all of them are to this degree, but it's unusual for us to see this many trees on structures. So you see the house in the lower left had part of their garage roof taken off by the wind, and I think it was also impacted in the back by a tree that came down on it. See a lot of trees just pushed over on top of structures. Our biggest problem, though, is the debris itself. In the '07 ice storm, a lot of people you've heard a lot of people comparing at least the April 29th storm to the '07 ice storm. The thing was with the ice storm was we had a lot of branches down. Some of them were large branches, but it was not the entire tree coming down. In this event, because the ground was so wet and the wind was so strong, it literally, instead of breaking the tree, it just pushed the tree over, root ball and all. The problem is when you're dealing with trees of this size, root balls of this size, it takes a very long time to cut them up. And sometimes you can't do it with just a normal chainsaw. You got to have the bigger stuff to be able to deal with this kind of debris, and then of course if the tree is laying on a house, that complicates it even further. So it's not typical that your traditional homeowner is going to be able to get a tree off of their roof or off their house easily, if at all, because it's just dangerous, and typically people don't have the equipment to do so. Let's talk a little bit about our disaster declarations. So we usually deal with a couple of different declarations. One is the Stafford Act declaration, which I'll go through here, and it has two elements to it. And then the other is a Small Business Administration declaration, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. But the Stafford Act declaration has two pieces to it. The first one is public assistance. The public assistance side is the assistance that local governments or jurisdictional authorities receives. Okay, so that would be us, that would be school districts, fire districts, et cetera. So the way the process works, pretty much for both of them, but for public assistance, local jurisdiction declares an emergency, which we did. We in emergency management or at the local level conduct a damage assessment. In the case of the uh, June 29th storm, I'm sorry, the April 29th storm, um, we had well over the amount of damages needed to declare us at the state level. Those damages change on an annual basis, but this year those damages are 1.3 million. So in order for us to request assistance through the state for a declaration, we have to get at least $1.3 million in jurisdictional damage, governmental damage of some sort. And that's a combination of, Greene County, any of the municipalities, the city of Springfield, the public utilities, the school districts, any governmental entity. Once we reach 1.3 million, then we can put in a request through the governor's office for a declaration. Now, then the state would declare an emergency. And once that happens, the state also has a threshold. So we've reached our $1.3 million threshold. Now the state has to reach a $13 million threshold. And that's anywhere in the state that had damage from this particular disaster, whatever it is, tornadoes, earthquakes, floods, whatever. In the case of the April 29th storm, not only did we meet our Greene County threshold, we met the entire state threshold just in Greene County. So that one, we were good to go for public assistance. And once the state meets their threshold, then the governor will request through FEMA a presidential declaration through the Stafford Act, which the president himself has to sign. So in our case, we did get that declaration. So we are still in the process. Matter of fact, we have a meeting on, tomorrow with FEMA to discuss all of the ins and outs of what we need to do for filing for reimbursement. Now, once we receive that, it's typically a 75-25 match on reimbursing for our disaster. A lot of times what we will do, if possible, we will provide a soft match for our 25%. This helps to increase the amount of money that we receive back. A lot of times that soft match comes in the form of volunteer hours, which we'll talk a little bit more about here in a minute. But that just allows us to recoup a little bit more funds than we would normally otherwise do. The other part of the Stafford Act is individual assistance. Now, individual assistance is a little different. This is the assistance that is granted to businesses, to individual citizens, et cetera. That's the free money everybody talks about when it comes to disasters and FEMA. Well, that one's a little more difficult to get because there are no numbers. There are no hard numbers out there for individual assistance. Don't ask me why, it's just how it's always been. It runs the gambit on whether or not you would qualify for individual assistance. The one number that is squishy that I've heard is around 250 houses or businesses have to be damaged or destroyed. Typically, these are going to be uninsured losses or underinsured losses. So those are a little more difficult, again, to locate. But other things that come into play. A political environment, but is it an election year? I'm sorry, it just comes into play. Is it an election year? How much media exposure was there? Did people die? Were people injured? These are all things that come into play that help determine whether or not you will get an IA declaration. It just, nobody will tell you that, but 30 years of experience tells me that that's how it always kind of goes. So, wrong way. On April 29th, this is kind of the distribution of damages that we had. The green dots are these are all structures of some sort, barns, houses, businesses. The green is something that was affected. Okay, wasn't really damaged that much, but there was, there were shingles off. There was a branch on a house, something to that effect, but it wasn't major. The yellows are minors. Again, a little more damage. The oranges are majors. Uh, Again, probably the structure is still livable, but there's some major issues going on. And then the reds were destroyed. The roof was partially off. There's issues with the structural walls. I mean, it's just major damage that is going to take either complete reconstruction or major reconstruction to be able to deal with. So that was kind of the distribution that we had. On the April 29th storm, 75,000 people lost power. That was countywide. That was across the utilities. That was across all of the electric co-ops. We had 272 damage assessments completed. And those damage assessments, that's our staff, that's the assessor's office, that's building regulations, all working together to complete those, as well as some of the city departments as well. But we were able to complete those in about a week and a half, and that's physically going out and looking at 272 properties. And you can kind of see the distribution of what we found. Now, we utilize the FEMA rating system for making those determinations on affected, minor, major, destroyed. And the reason we do that is because that's what's going to determine whether or not we can apply for a disaster declaration. Okay, there's many other ways. The building regulations department in the inspector's side, they have different categories and different criteria for determining what's destroyed, what's damaged, et cetera. We use the FEMA stuff because that's what we have to turn in and submit for the declaration purposes. Infrastructure costs for the April 29th storm, $240,000 is what was estimated for the highway department. Those numbers fluctuate up and down a little bit and still are, frankly. And again, we're still working with FEMA on settling on what those exact numbers are going to ultimately be. City utilities alone lost right around 12 million. I do not have numbers on the co-ops, but that number, obviously, it would just go up from there. But so you can see that, we were well within the thresholds of what were required for reimbursement by FEMA. Again, we did get the declaration for PA, even though we didn't get an individual assistance declaration. We did receive a declaration from the Small Business Administration for low interest loans. Now, interestingly, Small Business Administration, their declarations cut across the board. One, it's much easier to get an SBA declaration. There are two real caveats. One, you have to be denied by FEMA to get an individual assistance declaration, which we did. And two, once they come in and do their assessments, you have to have a minimum, just a minimum of 25 uninsured or underinsured losses. That's residences, businesses. It could be vehicles. They're loaning on, if you have trees down in your yard, didn't impact a structure, your insurance won't cover it. They will give you a loan to clean those trees up. Most people don't know that, but they will. These are low interest loans, typically 3 to 4%, carried out up to 30 years. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Yes, ma'am.
Now, I would assume naively that Small Business Administration loan, you would actually have to be a business.
Most people do, and it's kind of, they don't advertise well.
And then, out of curiosity, do you know what interest rate of what they call a low interest?
Yeah. So the question is, see, I'm remembering this. I was told I needed to repeat the question. So the question is, does Small Business Administration loan to other than businesses? That's a two-parter, right? And then also, what is the typical interest rates that we see people getting loans at? The interest rates that I'm seeing kind of is between 3 and 4%. And then, no, you don't have to be a business to get a loan. You can be a citizen, you can have a business. Your truck could have been destroyed in your driveway because a tree landed on it. They will loan on vehicles. They will, as I said, if you have, and we've had this, we have a lot of people with trees, large trees in their yard, and the tree companies are charging, $3,000 to $5,000 to pick this big tree up because they have all the business they need in the world right now. They have no incentive whatsoever to lower prices, right? So, but the SBA will loan to get those trees cleaned up out of your yard because typically insurance will cover it if the tree is laying on your house, but they won't cover it if the tree did not land on anything. If it just fell in your yard, you still got to clean it up. The insurance company's not going to give you any money for it. So, but the SBA will provide a loan to get that cleaned up if it costs, $5,000 or $6,000. Most people don't have that just sitting around doing nothing, right? So, did that answer your
Yeah,
question?
absolutely. Thank you.
Very good. Okay. June 29th storm. So second storm came in, and you can see the dots on the map aren't as dire in the yellow, orange, red category, but still there were quite a few of them. The distribution was really centered kind of in the southwest corner of the area, not as much in the county. It really impacted the city probably more than out in the county this go around. It was much more wider distributed on the April 29th storm. This time we only had 50,000 people out of power instead of 75. We still did do 221 damage assessments. You can kind of see the distribution of those. Again, not as dire as the April storm, but still, if you're one of those 9 people that had their structure destroyed, then it's still pretty dire for you. Did not have any estimates because we knew we weren't going to probably make the public assistance threshold for this one. So I didn't really have any cost estimates for highway in this particular one, but we did run the numbers for city utilities, and they came in around 8 million on this one. So just in the last 2.5 months, 3 months, city utilities has lost about $20 million in assets of some sort, whether it's poles or overtime for people putting the stuff back together or transformers or whatever. It's been a pretty big loss for them the last couple of months. Again, this one did not, the June 29th did not qualify for FEMA assistance. However, as of last week, we just did conduct another SBA assessment, and we're in the process. We feel pretty confident we're going to get another SBA declaration for the June 29th storm as well. So the drawback, well, it's not a drawback, the complication is trying to keep the 2 storms separate because there are a lot of people who had damages from the April storm, hadn't got it cleaned up, hadn't got anything done with it, and then here comes the June storm, and now everything is just kind of muddled together. So, but these declarations require, to the extent possible, that the 2 remain separate. How you do that with a bundle of trees laying in your yard, I don't know, but that's typically the requirement. I talked earlier about volunteer support and how we track those hours to make sure that we can use those hours to the degree possible for soft matches, because the government actually attaches a dollar amount to every volunteer hour that is conducted. So, and that dollar amount changes on an annual basis, just like all the other numbers do. But for the last 2 storms, we logged about 1,200 hours of volunteer time, both local citizens doing volunteer work as well as outside organizations like the Southern Baptist coming in and serving meals. And speaking of that, the Southern Baptist both times brought in their mobile kitchens out of Jefferson City. One is on a 38-foot gooseneck trailer. The other one's on a 53-foot tractor trailer. The gooseneck can serve hundreds of meals per day. The tractor trailer can serve thousands of meals per day. And so we were able to serve 5,500 meals between the 2 storms. They don't ask questions. If you come through and you want to eat, they will hand you a container through the window of your car and you move on. But we were very, very pleased that they came in both times and were able to assist our citizens in their time. Because even if your house didn't suffer any damage, but you were out of power for a week and a half in the middle of the summer with all the kids home with, no refrigerated, no way of refrigeration, no way of cooking meals, you know, even going to McDonald's, with a family of five, that's a $50 bill anymore. And you do that 3 times a day, and people can't support that even if you have a good job. So that's one of the reasons that we made the determination to come in and have the Southern Baptist do feeding operations for us. All right, so and look, we still have time left over for questions. What a deal. So I would entertain any. Yes, ma'am.
How do you track who had damage? Is that word of mouth or?
No, it's good. So the question is, how do we track who had damage? So we have over at the Public Safety Center, we have in our computer lab, which also doubles as our call center. So what we do is we have volunteers that come in and staff phones. Literally, we have operators standing by, but we have up to 24 positions where people can answer phones for us. We have a static number that we advertise. People will call in with their damages, with their information requests. Where can I get ice? I'm out of power. I need ice. When's the power going to come back on? Nobody knows. Nobody ever knows. I mean, we don't know. But they'll take that information, they log it into a computer database for us, and then we start tracking the numbers. We start plotting the locations on a map, and we start developing spreadsheets of where these damages are. And eventually, we'll send out assessment teams to take a look and see the extent of what the damage is. Yes, sir.
On your first or second slide, you showed some thresholds for FEMA declaration. And do I treat that like my copay? Like once I hit the threshold for the year or new events, I don't have to hit a threshold for new events, or is every event a unique?
Every event is a new, you have to meet that same threshold with every event.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't, as much as we would like. Now, the only caveat to that is FEMA allows a specific time. So if we have a situation where, say, it's in the winter with winter storms, or even in the summer where we just have repeated storm after storm after storm. I think back to the 2011 Joplin event where we just had a week's worth of storms, just one after the other. They will group within a time frame storms together, right? So you can use instead of independently assessing those storms, you can use all those storms in that one package time frame and lump everything together. But typically it's on a disaster by disaster basis, which makes it inconvenient because you got to meet that same threshold for every disaster, and it's kind of hard sometimes. What else? I either did a really good job, you guys are asleep, or I don't know. You're just over disasters. Yes, ma'am.
Wanted to volunteer during disaster to take the phone calls. How do you do that?
Well, call our office. So, and it's easier if you call us than we call you because we never know who wants to volunteer, right? But in our office, Ronnie Bell is our community engagement specialist, and she typically handles the wrangling of those volunteer positions for us. And so just call our office, tell us that you're interested in volunteering, and we'll put you to work. What else? Wow. Well, thank you all for having me. I appreciate it.